Hello and welcome to another video and podcast from Fantasy Football Scout. We've got another first draft team reveal for you today, and I am joined by Mark, aka the FPL General, who is back on Scout this year. So Mark, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, Tom. I hope you're doing well yourself. It's good to be back on Scout for another season. Really enjoyed it last year. Just back from a holiday, so this is very much my first proper look and first proper discussion about FPL. So I've been really looking forward to this one over the last couple of days. Very much a one and only draft so far. So I'm looking forward to you ripping it apart because you've probably done a lot more tinkering than I have in the first week or so.
Yeah, rested and ready to go for pre-season.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, as we've been doing on all these videos, we'll get a bit of a fan perspective as well. And Mark, you're a Man United fan, so we'll chat a little bit about Ten Hag and his team a little bit later on in the video. But first, we'll go to Mark's rank history and just get a little flavour of Mark as a manager. It's very impressive, very long, very experienced. There's three top 500 finishes in there for those on the podcast who can't see it. But perhaps more impressively, it's just the consistency. By my maths, you've only been outside the top 100k once in 11 years. So would you say you adopt a consistent approach, a consistent style that enables these finishes?
Yeah, I think so. And when I remember when I was kind of early in my days, taking getting involved in the FPL community and stuff like that, and I put the Elite 64 league together. I always valued, I rated managers very highly who were consistent more than people who had one or two really good finishes and then maybe a few not so good ones. So I've always kind of strived for consistency. It's been quite a while, to be fair, since I've had a really high finish. Those three top 500s came, I think the last one was 2017, 2018. So really it's about time I got another one. I've kind of just been having steady, consistent seasons since then rather than spectacular seasons. And of course, there's no getting away from that disaster 2018, 2019, when I finished over 500k. I always put down to getting married. First year of marriage threw me off course. But it was actually the first year as well where I went full-time FPL, and I made a lot of mistakes with content. I took on too much. I was having way too many, one-to-one conversations and stuff, and it was to the detriment of my own team. But probably learned more in that terrible season than I ever did before, and bounced back. And it's been, I think, top 50k every year since then. So I try not to put too much pressure on myself rank wise, but like most managers who take the game very seriously, I fall into that trap most seasons. And again, last year I was going into the game week 38, just trying to get into that top 50k, and thankfully I got there. So yeah, consistency has been there, but I would like to get maybe a fourth top 1k. I've got a few FPL chips sitting behind me here on the window. I've got four top 50s, four top 25s, and I've got three top 1k. So if we get one more chip for the collection, that would be nice. So we'll set that as a very loose goal going into the new season.
Yeah, fingers crossed for this year. But yeah, I mean, obviously that consistency approach might be challenged slightly this year with some of the changes that are in the game. Of 5 transfers you can roll now, so that's a massive change, probably the biggest one. And then obviously this mystery chip that is going to come in and throw everyone off course in January. But first of all, the 5 transfers, do you think that'll, are you a patient manager? Will that lend itself to your benefit, or do you think you'll rarely get to 4 or 5 transfers?
Yeah, first off, it's great to see that they've made some drastic changes. I think a lot of us have been kind of crying out for something over the last, 5, 6, 7 years, and it's good. It's good that it finally happened. But also when it did happen, I thought to myself, oh right, this is quite a big change. I'm probably one of those people who don't like change too much. I've had a steady couple of years in FPL, and this is gonna. It's going to challenge me, I think, as much as anyone else. But initial thoughts were, I think 5 transfers probably does suit me because I'm patient anyway. I will very often try and roll a transfer. So I would expect to see myself getting to 3 or 4 transfers banked maybe before some others. But I think it's gonna be very interesting to see how it plays out because there's gonna be a huge conflict, especially game week 2, game week 3. You're gonna have, bandwagons, you're gonna have players that are probably going to rise, zero point 0.3 million over the course of a week, and you've got to weigh up, do I want to have 3 or 4 free transfers as soon as possible, or do I want to get on this player who could well be, this season's Cole Palmer, or a very good goalkeeper could emerge or something like that. So I really like the change. I'm really looking forward to seeing how it plays out. I'm not 100% sure yet how it will change my game, but I think it will. I'll probably just stick with the slow and steady approach. I tend to give players a lot of time anyway, so I do expect to have plenty of transfers available for the most part of the season. And of course, you've got to get lucky with not getting players injured. Last year was a bit of a disaster for me. I think I wildcarded towards the end, and 4 or 5 of the defenders got injured. Players like Lascelles and all those guys, and brought in Fabian Schär, and he got injured too. So if you can have a smooth season injury wise and suspension wise, I do think getting those transfers banked as quickly as you can gives you so much more flexibility. We always talk about the mini wildcard. It's a much bigger mini wildcard that we can do now. So yeah, I like the change, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it plays out. More than anything, it's going to add variety in teams, in mini leagues, in the overall ranking. So I think that can only be a good thing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think getting off to a good start this year is going to be massively key. I know, as we're saying on Wednesday's video when you're watching this, if you get off to a good start and you've got 4 or 5 transfers, that you're going to be pretty hard to catch. So yeah, we'll have to see how it plays out as we head into the season. But yeah, so we'll move on to Manchester United now. I will bring up a stats table from the members area which sorts the key Manchester United FPL assets by expected goal involvement, and for the podcast listeners, at the top is obviously Bruno Fernandes with 20, and then you have to go back a fair way to Garnacho on 11, Rashford on 10, and Højlund on 8, and then McTominay on 6 as well. And then the best performing defender for XGI is Dalot with 4, with Luke Shaw just under 1 from just 12 starts. So yeah, I guess just on a sort of holistic question, Ten Hag is staying. Obviously, we thought he was going to be sacked, but he is staying. So do you think that will be good for the sort of stability and potential improvement going into the season?
I think, like most Manchester United fans, and I say I'm a fan of my loyalty to United has been dwindling for ever since Ferguson left. Really, I was surprised, like many, that Ten Hag did stay on, and I guess they obviously looked at a few options and thought he was the best one of the lot. So it's probably refreshing overall from a Premier League perspective that they are giving him more time, and I do hope for himself that he does turn things around and we can have a much better season. But I do find it hard to get excited about Manchester United FPL wise. Again, we're always looking back on the most recent season. Yeah, we had moments where Garnacho was good, but obviously he's a lot more expensive now. Rashford had a very quiet season. Again, much cheaper again now than he was previously. Bruno Fernandes is probably the one that's of most interest to me because you always know what you're going to get from him. You've got the consistency, you've got the minutes, he's got the penalties. I suppose a lot of it comes down to how many penalties Manchester United actually win over the course of the season, which we can never predict. So a couple of new signings coming in there as well, like Lenny Yoro, Zerki and a few other ones. So it'll be interesting to see how they bed in. But overall, not very excited. And again, I'm just on the FPL website here. I'm looking at the ownership percentages, and I think it seems to be most managers are like myself. There's not a huge amount of love for United in the early part of the season. I think maybe the most interesting is Martinez in defence, just because he's 4.5. That he could have easily been 5. That's a bit of a kind of a surprise price. And so if he can stay fit, could do well in bonus and stuff like that. He's one to keep an eye on. So it's probably Martinez and Bruno are the only 2 that really interest me from the start.
Yeah, I mean, from the start, I think it's key there because I think Garnacho and Rashford, I mean, it wasn't too long ago Rashford was, he scored 30 goals in the season, didn't he? So, he could make a mockery of his price, and Garnacho as well, as you mentioned. And then, yeah, Martinez, he was on my list. I think he's good at 4.5. But, when you see there's Villa defenders, Newcastle defenders, Chelsea defenders, 4.5, there's quite a bit of competition at that price range.
I think I would need a full month to figure out which 4.5 defender to go for. There's that many options this year, but that's good. Again, it'll add some variety. I think a lot of people will probably go down the rotation route, with maybe third and fourth defender as 4.5. So it's good to have plenty of options in the mix for that.
Yeah, and then just finally on Man United, Onana, do you think at 5 he's got a little bit of potential this year, or do you usually look at a 4.5 keeper?
I think five's probably a fair price, and it probably will tempt a few people in, especially if we can keep a couple of clean sheets early doors. But as we'll see soon in my first draft, I do gravitate towards a 4.5 goalkeeper most seasons. So 4.5 set and forget, and a 4 million option on the bench. I don't like rotating goalkeepers. I just get like everyone else get frustrated when you have the wrong one on the bench and your keeper with a good fixture gets a 1 pointer. So yeah, I think I'm very likely to go down the 4.5 million goalkeeper route, which means again from the start, Onana probably won't be there. So it's a wait and watch for me on most Manchester United assets.
Yeah, definitely. So I'll bring up the fixture ticker next. We'll just have a sort of quick chat about these. Man United are quite near the top actually, with Fulham at home, Brighton away, then Liverpool, then Southampton and Palace. So potentially people who punt on Garnacho could get rewarded. But what sort of stands out to you? Liverpool are top of the ticker after 6, but on screen it's 5, so they're second. How much attention do you sort of pay to the ticker at this stage of the season, or do you just trust the big teams to get it right?
As I was saying to you before we came on, I was on holiday, so I was quite disciplined and I stayed away from thinking about FPL as much as possible. And usually at this point, I would have a lot of kind of in-depth stuff done on fixtures, but we still have plenty of time to do that, and that's something I will be doing over the next couple of weeks. For me, fixtures probably come first over almost anything else when it comes to picking a player or buying a player or thinking about bringing in someone for captaincy for a couple of weeks. So fixtures are very, very important, and I've been using Creature Habit. I've been on the Scout fixture ticker for probably 10 plus years now, even before I became involved with Scout. So it's always when I make my transfers on a Friday night, the Scout fixture ticker is open. And again, just before we start recording, I was kind of looking at the first 4 weeks and the first 6 weeks, the first 8 weeks, just to kind of see how the team's slightly different in that period. I think with, possibly 4 or 5 free transfers available by the time we get to game week 5 or 6, I think I will be looking at the ticker in terms of the first 6 game weeks when I'm building my game week 1 squad. So what stands out here straight away is Liverpool. I don't think I've got any Liverpool assets in my first draft. So straight away that flagged that up to me. And players like Trent come to mind, Mohamed Salah, who I think are going to be very popular from the start. Trent's he's very attractive because he's got the price drop. I think he's 7 million now when he has been 8 million previously. Obviously, new manager, all the rest, but fixtures are king for me, and they look good for Liverpool there for the first 6 game weeks. Elsewhere, Crystal Palace. I'm quite happy to see them near the top to start with because I had a lot of joy with them, especially on the free hit last season. They got 50 points from Mateta, Eze, and Munoz in that 1 game week. So those guys are very interesting. Again, Munoz in particular. Villa are near the top, but I know there's no Europe in the first couple of weeks, but I do worry about Villa assets this season with Champions League. Probably going to see a bit more, reduced minutes for certain players. And then towards the bottom of the ticker, it jumps out the Manchester City are down there, but I kind of ignore Manchester City when I see a fixture ticker because obviously best team in the league. And I'm very interested in, quite a few of their assets as is obvious. Arsenal are down there as well. So maybe there's a case to maybe avoid 1 or 2 of them initially and maybe use some of those free transfers to get on them when fixtures improve. So yeah, fixture ticker will be something I'll be looking at a lot between now and kickoff.
Yeah, for sure. I think Arsenal are the interesting one there because we'll come to a draft and I know you've got an Arsenal defender, but they've got Villa, Spurs and City and Brighton in the first 5. Does that put you off slightly, or is the fact that statistically they're very much the best defence, does that give you a little bit of comfort?
Again, maybe I'm putting too much weight on last season, but it always just kind of feels comfortable, throwing in one Arsenal defender because you know what you're going to get. Even in difficult fixtures, there's a good chance of a clean sheet given how good they've been in recent times under Arteta. So, but again, looking to sign the new Italian guy, I think it's Calafiori, is it? So that could be, just one more body in there for as an option for Arteta as well. Then when you throw in the fact that they are more expensive than they were last season, I can understand why that. I'm seeing a lot of drafts that don't have any Arsenal defenders. When you put all those factors into it, it's totally understandable. And again, we don't have to. If you go without an Arsenal defender at the start, it doesn't mean you can't bring them in after a couple of game weeks. So I've got one at the moment, but by no means a sure thing for game week 1.
Yeah, interesting. Cool. So we'll get onto your team shortly, but first of all, I'll just give a quick shout out to the Fantasy Football Scout members area, which is currently 40% off. if you check out the link in the description. As Mark was saying, the fixture ticker is super useful at this time of year. You can sort it by difficulty, you can take out teams, you can take out game weeks, so you can perfect those defender rotations. And if you disagree with the ratings that we've given the teams, if you think that Arsenal's fixtures are a bit easier than we think they are, you can change the difficulty settings on there and make them go higher up on the ticker, if that's your opinion. So that is fully customizable, fully interactive, along with the stats tables and the premium articles, of which Mark will be writing for us again this year, which is great, and he'll be appearing on YouTube regularly as well, along with his 59th Minute podcast, which you can find on all good podcast providers, and that is, of course, sponsored by Fantasy Football Scout. We'll get onto his team in a second, but first of all, I'm just going to throw quickly to another EFL promotion, which we're doing. Really exciting game that's coming out this year for the EFL. So you pick 7 players, you pick 2 teams, you get a free hit every single week, and there's some great prizes, and we'll be covering it all on Scout. So just a quick advert for that, and then we'll be back with Mark's team. Hey guys, we'll get back to FPL General's team reveal very soon, but first of all, I just wanted to bring you another quick Fantasy EFL update alongside Chris. This is a new game, if you haven't heard of it. It's free, it's innovative, it's based on the Championship, League 1 and League 2, all 72 clubs. You get effectively a free hit team every week to pick 7 players, and then you pick 2 clubs who you think are going to win that week as well. So there's lots to get into, and it starts before FPL if you're really craving that fantasy fix before the Game Week 1 deadline. So in this short clip, I'm going to get Chris to talk through his current draft and maybe give you a little bit of inspiration for your first pit team as well. So Chris, do you want to read out your team for the podcast listeners and then justify your selections?
Justify my selection under the cosh, yeah. So the team, this is my provisional team. Bear in mind, this is for the podcast. Provisional team. Don't rip it apart just yet. I've got in goal. I've got Alex Palmer, West Brom, Waste QPR. Defence, I have Ethan Ampadu for Leeds, home to Portsmouth, his first game. Then Anil Ahmedhodzic. How do you say it?
Ahmedhodzic.
I've got Anil, as I call him, my mate, away to Preston North End from Sheffield United. Then in midfield, I've got Sammy Schmodix, fantastic pick. Everyone's going to have him home to Derby. I've got Gabriel Sara, away to Oxford for Norwich. Crescencio Somerville, who's for Leeds, obviously. Might well be my captain, actually, home to Portsmouth. And then I've got Alfie May, who will be playing home to Reading for Birmingham, ex of Charlton, but playing for Birmingham now. That is my 7. Yeah, so that's my lineup, and I can talk through a bit of those choices. I will stress this is a very first draft, very kind of provisional. So much to learn about this game, so much data to absorb, so much pre-season form to check out. So this will change a little bit, and it does feel to me already a little bit too championship led, because I think the real joy of this game is going to be kind of digging into the League 1 and League 2 and finding some gems in there. And if you've only got 7 selections for like 72 clubs, it's mental. It's just absolutely mental. Like you're not even touching 10% of the clubs in the game. So anyway, a little talk about some of my thoughts about why I'm doing each player. So Alex Palmer is West Brom in goal. He actually recorded a joint record clean sheets last season. Same with Melier, 18 clean sheets. I don't really want to use a lead slot on the goalkeeper at the moment. First fixture is away to QPR, and I can see some save points there as well as hopefully a cleanie. So I'm pretty happy with that. Ampadu is currently my route into Leeds defence. He's got 21 clean sheets last season, 79 tackles, 37 shots, 106 clearances. And tackles, shots blocked, sorry, not shots, shots blocked. Tackles, shots blocked, and clearances are all things that you're going to get points for. So I'm going to be looking a lot more at the numbers of those things to work that out. There could be better options. He's not got any goals. He's not a goal-scoring threat, really. But that's where I'm going at the moment. I certainly expect clean sheets and some extra points from him. I've got, Arnold Ahmedhodzic, which I said terribly. He got 2 goals, so he did get a goal-scoring threat. Sheffield United, I expect them to be difficult to beat. Obviously, dropped down from the Premier League. I expect them to have a decent season. But also, as a defender, they've got a lot. He got a great number of clearances, 132 clearances, 32 interceptions, 59 tackles. I might well change that, but at the moment, he's also very well backed in the game. It's an interesting thing when you start looking at the stats in the game. again, like as in FPL, you can see how many players select to play. He's on 15.7% at the moment. Now that's interesting, but obviously it's going to be massively skewed towards the top supported clubs in the Championship. So Leeds assets are going to be right up there. Sheffield United. I mean, a lot of those the bigger fan based clubs are going to skew those selection things. So don't be completely led by that. I've been influenced by it. You can't not be. Talking of that though, what I am definitely influencing the midfield is Sammy Schmodix. Oh, I can't get it right. I had that right before. Anyway, Sammy, as I call him, of Blackburn. He is the #1 pick player in the game right now with just under 60%. And I think he's going to be a fixture that's not going to move for me and will be for most. He's home to Derby first week. He scored 27 goals and 4 assists last season across the competitions. He's kind of classed as a mid, and there's some questions about classifications, but that means he's going to get 5 points for each goal, and he's going to get extra points for kind of for interceptions if he gets any of those. 105 shots taken, 59 shots on target. He gets points for shots on target as well. And he's one of the leading shots on target players from the Championship last season. So if he stays, which is the big question, a lot of people go. There's a lot of transfer merry-go-round going on at the moment in the Championship and the League One, League Two. You have to keep checking that. If he stays, he's definitely in my side. I've got then Gabriel Sara, who's is my way into Norwich at the moment. He has a decent fixture away to promoted Oxford. Got 13 goals and 12 assists last season, so plenty of goal scoring threat. And I expect a lot of key passes, which are another metric you get points for. Took 74 shots, 34 on target. Pretty impressive that. On target shots, again, something you get points for. So yeah, I think I want a Norwich player because I expect them to do well and be up there. And that's where I'm going at the moment. I might, shop around, but that's where I'm at. Of course, there's no prices, so you can there's no price limitations. It's not like going, oh, I can't have Salah and Haaland. You can have who you flipping like here. And talking of which, up front, I have Leeds Crescencio Somerville, who is currently the second most selected player in the game and scored 20 goals and 9 assists across competitions last season. Got 56 shots on target, very close to Sammy. Blackburn, 86 shots he took. You've got to be in. I don't think you can avoid the Leeds attack if you can take this seriously. They're expected to go one better than last season and get promoted. They were very close. They're going to score goals unless they're completely decimated. Obviously, there is rumours about a few players going, like Nonto potentially. So I'm kind of staying clear of him at the moment. But at the moment, I haven't heard too much about Somerville, so I think he'll stay. And I expect them to start strong at home to Portsmouth. And then finally, because that's just how short a team reveal is. Finally, I'm going to opt for. I was going to opt for Mullin. I really wanted Mullin because, come on, we all love, Welcome to Wrexham and Ryan Reynolds. I interviewed Ryan Reynolds once. It's a whole different story, but lovely guy. But he's not going to be involved, so it's weird because he's selected in the game by about 21% of people. But everything I'm reading is he's had a back operation or spinal operation, and he's not going to start the season. So don't pick him. Don't pick him yet. Pick him later. So I'm going instead for Birmingham's Alfie May. He was the top goal scorer in the was it League One last season for Charlton. Got 23 goals and 1 assist, and had 53 shots on target from 91. This year he's with Birmingham. He's going to be on pens. He's already scored in pre-season, albeit against Solihull Moors, not Motors, Solihull Moors. Solihull Motors sounds like obviously a car exchange place, but Solihull Moors. And I think he's gonna start well, and I can see Birmingham are obviously expected to do well, so I want them to bounce back up to the Championship. So I'm expecting big things of him. So yeah, it's a pretty heavyweight team so far. I think I could look at the defense a little bit. I'm happy with most of those things, but I think that team will change a bit as we go through and we see more pre-season, something we're covering on Scout, and get more data. But that's my team. And then the other two things, because a team reveal is not complete without teams. You can pick 7 players, but you need 2 teams. So with this game, just to reiterate, you get points. You get pick 2 winning teams, as I call them, each week. You get 5 points if they win, 3 points if they draw, but you don't care about that. 5 points to win, an extra 2 points if they get a clean sheet, an extra 2 points if they win away, and an extra 2 points if they score 2 goals or more. So really, what you're looking for is teams that are going to win away and can score. Clean sheets a bit less predictable, but that's what you're going for. So on that note, I'm going with West Brom away to QPR. I think that's a good chance of points first week, and Coventry City are away to Stoke. I might chat. This is the element of the lineup that I'm most likely to change, but I think they're solid picks to start with. The thing you've got to bear in mind, though, and this is something we'll be coming back to again and again, is you only get to pick a side 5 times through the season. So you can't just go Leeds, Birmingham, West Brom. You can't do that. You're going to have to think strategically, and you've got to also think there's going to be double game weeks. There might even be treble game weeks. Treble game weeks. Can you imagine treble game week? Fantastic. It's just like my head will explode. I think we once had a treble in FPL. But it does take me back. I'm old grey haired, so I'll have to look.
Yeah,
through
Man
the
United.
archive.
It was quite recently. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, all right, fair enough. See, there you go. All right, look at that the young whippersnapper knows all about it. I don't, but I remember the bit. But treble, but this is it's almost certain to happen, I think, and we'll certainly get. Maybe it's not, which clubs are going to get them. We don't know yet, but there's definitely because the way the fixtures work, the Thursday to Wednesday, and once we get, certainly around the festive season, we get a bit of fixture pile up with the competitions. You're going to see a lot of football played. Obviously, players aren't guaranteed to start all those games, and which teams are playing. We will have to wait and see. But yeah, the point about that was just don't. First week's fine, but bear in mind, don't blow all your top clubs too early on because you're going to need them later in the season.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Chris. Remember to check out the link in the description. Get your team in, give it a go. It looks like a really fun and innovative fantasy format. But for now, we're going to head back to FPL General's team reveal. So just as a reminder, you can check out Fantasy EFL in the link in the description and set up your team and get involved because it looks like great fun. So Mark, we'll back with Mark and we'll crack on with your team. I'll read it out quickly for the podcast and then we can get into it. Mark's gone for Areola and Fabianski, the West Ham double up. He's got a back three of Gvardiol, Gabriel and Konsa, a midfield five of Foden, Eze, Bruno Fernandes, Nkunku and Gordon, and up front he's gone for Haaland and Isak. And on the bench he's gone for Fabianski, Stewart, the Southampton forward, Harwood Bellis, the Southampton defender, and Faz, the Leicester defender. So, Mark, I guess this draft's a little bit different than what we've seen before because you've got Foden and Bruno as opposed to Salah. So what's your thinking there, especially with Liverpool's really good fixtures?
Yeah, again, this is my one and only draft so far. So this was put together maybe 2 days after the game launched, and that's what I like to try and just before I listen to anything, before I read anything, I like to just plug in what I like initially and leave it there as long as possible. Make sure I take a screenshot of it before I start tinkering, and then go back to it. The day of game week 1, just ask myself, why are those initial thoughts different? Should I go back to those initial thoughts, or do I have good enough reason, to go elsewhere? So that's the starting point. This is very much this is the starting point for my tinkering. This is my template to begin with, and of course it will change, quite a bit before the season starts. So I think what I've learned though over the years is, I think the less tinkering you can do, probably the better. I think a lot of people probably mentally start playing FPL way too early, in the middle of July, and by the time they get to March, April time, they're burned out. So a key piece of advice here is, don't be on the FPL website every single day. I kind of rather listen to stuff podcast wise, YouTube, and kind of formulate my own thoughts before I start moving jerseys around on the page too much. So this is where my initial thoughts went. As I said earlier, I like a 4.5 million goalkeeper. So just Areola is basically a placeholder until I decide which 4.5 million goalkeeper I want, and it could well be Areola. I like the fact that his backup is also 4 million. It just, again, if I want to roll as many transfers as possible, if Areola gets injured, Fabianski's there. Of course, I'll monitor, the goalkeeper situation at West Ham before the season starts. In defence, then, we all know how good Gvardiol was at the end of last season. So it's just kind of banking on him continuing to play in that attacking role from left back. And again, it always just feels kind of warm and cozy to have a Manchester City defender, even though they don't keep as many clean sheets as they should. Maybe if Ederson does leave and Ortega takes over, maybe we'll see a few more. Elsewhere, Gabriel, again, we talked about Arsenal earlier. They're not too high on the fixture ticker, but again, just kind of feels easy to plug in an Arsenal and City defender to begin with, and then give that a lot more thought before the season starts. Could obviously take a bit of money out of defence. I could go down the route of maybe just one premium and go for maybe rotating 4.5s instead to free up a bit of cash elsewhere. And then we talked earlier as well, there's loads and loads of good 4.5 options. And I think Konsa at Aston Villa is one of the best ones. So that's why he went in there. That could be Martinez at Manchester United, and it could be one of 20, probably 20 options that will be under consideration there. Elsewhere, then across the midfield, I think Eze, if he stays at Crystal Palace, which is a big if at the moment, will almost certainly be in my team, I think, because I like the Crystal Palace fixtures. I just really like the player. I think there's a lot of routes to points now, especially Elise's gone, so maybe even more of a talisman there. In Kunku, I think the FPL prices are really, really good this year. There's one or two exceptions to that. I think Fabian Schär is one that comes to mind. It's maybe too expensive. But then on the other hand, Nkunku, I think, could be too cheap. So if it looks like he's going to play the first couple of games, I'd like to just be in there early, and could be a season keeper if he starts well and stays injury free. Obviously, there's a big question, Palmer versus Nkunku, but at the moment, 4 million saving goes a long way there. So that's why Nkunku's there instead. Then Bruno's in again, Manchester United fan. It's always nice to have one at least, but again, it's not a sure thing. I like the Fulham fixture game week 1. He's 8.5, I think, so it's quite easy to jump around to other players, maybe an Odegaard later, or maybe upgrade to someone else, or even just downgrade and free up cash. And completing the midfield, then you've got Foden and Gordon. Now Foden is definitely not a sure thing. I might go down the route of playing a little bit safe game week 1 with players that went to the final of the Euros. Just you've always got that slight concern that they might be eased back in after a longer break with their club. So Foden might come out. You mentioned Salah there, and Salah's very much on my mind. So maybe a case of finding money and getting Salah into the Foden spot. Up front, Gordon's there with Isak. That double up was so good last year. Newcastle have good fixtures to begin with. I still like their prices. So I think the Gordon Isak double up is very much a possibility for me to begin with. And even though he's gone to 15 million, Erling Haaland, there's obviously big debate in the community. Do you go with him? Do you go without him? At present, I'm leaning towards going with him. I don't mind the price hike too much. I just like leaning on him a lot for captaincy. So I don't mind paying the extra 1 million than he was last season. And then the bench at the moment, it's basically auto pick bench, 4 million defenders. And then you've got Ross Stewart. I watched Ross Stewart a lot when he was in Scotland before he moved down south. A lot of injury issues, but a very good striker on his day. So if he can get regular minutes, I think he'll become quite a popular 4.5 million striker. One of the big decision will be, do I go with 4 million defenders on the bench, or do I go a little bit stronger? I'm hearing a lot of other managers this year, because we have the transfers that we can roll. If you've got a stronger bench, it makes it easier to roll if you do pick up an injury. So that's something I'll be considering as well. If I can make it work, I would like to have a slightly stronger bench, maybe a 5.5 million forward instead of Ross Stewart, and I could even flip that and go 3-4-3 and just have maybe a 5 million or a 5.5 million midfielder in that position instead, and maybe even a 4.5 defender on the bench to go with a 4 million option. So obviously there's a lot going on there, but that's my starting point. So it's going to be interesting to see what the actual Game Week 1 team looks like when I compare it back to this one.
Yeah, for sure. Really good insight there. I was going to pick you up on the weakness of the bench, really, because we've had lots of managers on these videos, like Mark and Sam especially. They were saying with the 5 transfers, they're really keen on having a strong sort of 8th attacker and 5th defender. But I'm not sure I'm really convinced by that, because I do think if you do that, you risk missing out on points by rolling the transfer for the sake of it. But obviously, you do have a weak bench, and you say that may change. But yeah, do you think an 8th attacker is going to be really important this year?
Yeah, I think they're always important. I think they're getting more and more important with, we do get a lot of auto subs these days. I used Garnacho quite a lot last year as my 8th attacker. I didn't always benefit from his hauls, but when you've got a player like a Garnacho coming off the bench, there's potential there. He scored braces at times last year. I really like the idea of having a penalty taker as my 8th attacker. So, someone like an Adam Armstrong, Joe Pedro, if he's fit, and if he does have penalties, I think something like that would be pretty nice, because you've always got that chance of, a 6-7 pointer with a lucky penalty if you do need them off the bench. So, yeah, I definitely think my bench will be stronger by the time I get to game week 1, and I don't usually do it, but I think I might look at the rotation of the 4.5 million defenders this year, just because there's so many options. And I think because there is so many options, you're definitely going to get a lot of team pairings that match up really well in terms of good fixtures at home. Conta with someone else, for example. Like I said, I haven't studied the fixtures in too much detail yet, but I'm definitely more open to rotating two 4.5 defenders for that third spot than maybe I was previously. And just on the defense as well, I think Trent Alexander-Arnold is probably going to appear in some of my drafts after this one. I just fancy him with those fixtures.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, there's loads of 4.5 defenders this year. You got Palace, Chelsea, Newcastle, Man United, and yeah, but I mean, those are the standout ones. But yeah, so looking at the premium assets, you've gone for Haaland, and then you sort of avoided the Palmer, Saka, and Salah sort of areas. Are you worried a little bit about the inflexibility, maybe, or does that not concern you?
Yeah, it definitely does concern me. Now, you just reeled off three names there, and I got a shiver when you said each one of them, because they're not in my team, and that's why I like the pricing this year, because we do have to make these sacrifices, and we probably will have to. Yeah, we're all talking about saving transfers, but realistically, we're going to want to jump around these big guys and play the fixtures. So it's going to be just about getting that balance right. And I think when you look at my team there, when you've got Foden, Bruno, Gordon, Eze, and Kunku. Straight away, it's not easy to get the Palmer, Saka, etc., and it's certainly not easy to get the Mohamed Salah. So something I do often do game week 1 is the whole price point approach. And starting with the most expensive player in each position is a very easy way to do that. So you throw a Trent in defence, Salah midfield, Haaland up front, and build your team around that, and then you can get to anybody in one move. So even for just that very simple reason, I might end up with those three. And again, going back to Liverpool fixtures, which we've just seen, I think a Haaland, Salah, Trent triple up will be quite popular because it does leave you more flexible for those players. Going from Salah to a Saka or a Palmer, for example. So, but yeah, Nkunku is definitely a spanner in the works. I think if there was no such thing as Nkunku in the Premier League, Palmer probably would have been in my first draft because I just rate him so highly. And I know he's got a massive price hike, but I still expect he could well be good value again this year, even if he doesn't score as many points as he did last year. Maybe if he gets less penalties, for example. But he's just such a good player. We've seen it again when he came off the bench in the Euros. Probably should have played a lot more. So that Nkunku plus 4 million versus Palmer debate will probably go right down to the wire. And I'm sure there'll be points in the season if Chelsea do look good. The double up will be popular, I think, as well.
Yeah, I mean, after Man City, our fixtures are really, really good for the first few, so that could be something to consider. So yeah, just on the forwards, you've obviously Ollie Watkins, I think, is the most selected forward, and you've gone for Haaland and Isak instead. Do you think Watkins is a little bit expensive compared to Isak? Because I think, I mean, I'm quite surprised he's the most owned forward, but I feel for many managers he might slip through the cracks because I think Isak offers a bit better value, and then obviously Haaland is Haaland.
Yeah, well, I'm as big a fan of Watkins as anyone. He was really good to me last season. I had him for the most part, and he played a big part in getting that top 50k goal. So it would have been easy for me just to put him straight in. But again, you mentioned it. Isak is 0.5 cheaper. I think he's probably got better fixtures. He's probably has penalties when Watkins maybe doesn't. I know there's some debate over who takes him for Villa now, but I don't really expect it to be Watkins. So I think there's a lot of reasons. I think everything to me is pointing towards Isak to start with. I think Wilson's got a couple of niggles again as well, so that's another tick in Isak's, but in his favour. And again, I really want Haaland to begin with. So the question then is just, do I could take a Bruno Fernandes out and I could go for a Watkins and make it a front three, which I'm certainly not against. And there's plenty of other strikers, maybe at cheaper prices as well. But I think from everything I've just said, I don't think Watkins will make it into my Game Week 1 team, but I'm sure he'll be in there at some point during the season.
Yeah, definitely. And then Isak, you've got the vice captaincy on Isak. If you went with this team with Haaland and Isak, do you think there's a captaincy conversation there, or will you trust Haaland?
I think there probably is a captaincy conversation on Isak. Again, I'm building him up a lot already before the season starts, so we know there's a 2-pointer coming. But I think if I do go with Erling Haaland, it'll be very much probably similar to last season, kind of set and forget captaincy, unless he's playing maybe an Arsenal or maybe even a Liverpool. But the Chelsea fixture on paper, even though it's away, wouldn't bother me at all. Giving him the armband there, he's traditionally been a fast starter in the Premier League. And again, going back to the summer, I like that he's had a summer off. That's why I really like the thought of an Odegaard in midfield as well, maybe instead of a Bruno. So yeah, haven't looked at captaincy too much yet, but it's a good chance Haaland would get it if he's in.
Yeah, I mean, he scored a brace at Stamford Bridge last year, so yeah, definitely not a bad shout. And then looking defenders, are you set on 2 premiums? Is that sort of the structure you want, or do you think you potentially have 3 4.5s to rotate?
Yeah, I'm definitely keeping an open mind on defence, especially after the kind of disaster we had with defenders last year. Very few clean sheets, and I probably would expect it to be similar again this year. All 20 teams nowadays in the Premier League are capable of scoring goals against anyone. So, gut feeling is maybe don't spend too much on defenders and pump that cash into your attack and maybe your bench as well instead. So I think there's every chance one of my premiums might drop out of my defence. Maybe even both of them drop out, and it could become a Trent plus 3 4.5s, for example, like you said, because I spoke about rotating, 2 4.5s, but you could go all the way and get 3 of them and then play 2 every week. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. I do think I'll end up with 1 4 million, dud defender that will just be the 15th man, and I'll just rely on 2 subs rather than 3. So yeah, certainly not set on a 2 premium defensive setup. I think there's more chance I'll end up with just 1, and it's probably Gvardiol versus Trent at this point.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of playing 4 million defenders this year, which is quite good because I think there'll be a bit of variation, and we won't all flock to the super one that's playing in pre-season, because you've got 2 of them there and they're pretty locked in to start, so that's good to have as a 15th man in your squad. But yeah, we'll quickly do goalkeepers. You say you like to have 4.5 and a 4. You're not keen on spending sort of like even going to David Raya, who's cheaper than Gabriel, for example.
Not really. I dabbled with David Raya last year, and it was to my detriment because I think it was on a wild card. I had Gabriel basically all season. The pain of game week 1 to game week 4, or whatever it was. He didn't even play. Then managed to do well out of him and decided for some reason to sell him on the wild card just to be slightly different. And I went for David Raya instead. I'm pretty sure I missed a 17-pointer from Gabriel that I'll never, ever forget. So for that reason alone, I don't think I could do it. I would rather have Gabriel over Raya, even having to pay a little bit extra. And again, just when it comes to goalkeepers, if you've been playing the game for a long time, it's, the 4.5s, if you can get a decent one, they can provide a lot of value in terms of, bonus points and maybe the odd penalty save and stuff like that. So I've never been keen on paying too much for the goalkeeper. Whenever I'm tinkering, I always, if I'm, short of a player, for example, if I wanted to go in this team from Gabriel or Gvardiol to Trent, straight away, if I had a 5.5 million goalkeeper, I would just drop him down to a 4.5. It would be the first place I would go. So yeah, very unlikely to go for an expensive goalkeeper.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there. And then yeah, just finally sort of talking about maybe players that aren't in this draft that you're sort of looking for in pre-season. There's lots of questions with Chelsea, new manager, Liverpool. There's loads of potential Liverpool assets. Gakpo, Diaz, Darwin that could emerge and potentially cover Salah. So what are you sort of looking out for over the next few weeks?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't put too much stock into pre-season. I think as the years go on, I put less and less stock into it, and I often don't even bother looking at the results or who scored. It's maybe minutes sometimes is probably what I take from it most. But when it comes to game week 1, I'm very much just tried and tested. I play it very safe. I know who's going to play. I don't take any risks. So when you play that way, you're not really looking for gems in pre-season, and it's extremely rare that we get a gem in pre-season anyway. You can have a player. There's one season in particular I always remember, Nathan Redmond at Southampton and Deulofeu at Watford. I think both of them were incredible in pre-season, and they were both disastrous FPL picks. So I think that scarred me in that one season. So for me, I'm not too bothered about. I'm not looking out for too much. I'm more monitoring the minutes, particularly of those players who maybe went far in the Euros, who have been carrying knocks and stuff like that. So But yeah, there's obviously a lot of good players that are not in this team. I really enjoyed owning Pedro Porro last year, so he'll be under consideration. I've mentioned Odegaard a few times. I just have this gut feeling that I think 8.5 could be a good price. A 1.5 million saving on Saka, I think could be a good place to go. You've got loads of options, even in the forwards. Havertz did very well for me towards the end of last season. I thought he was great in the Euros as well. So yeah, there's plenty of scope here for change. And again, do you know what? I think I'm more excited about this season than I have been for a long time, and I'm sure that's the case for a lot of managers. So kudos to FPL for getting it right.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much variation in all the teams that we've had on Scout. From lots and lots of top managers. You can go back and watch all of those. We've had Mark Southerns, we've had Joe, we've had Tom Freeman, Sam, we've had Ed. I've just recorded with Simon, who won FPL in 2015, and his team was really interesting as well. So yeah, I guess I've been asking most people this. If I had to push you for a couple of names that you'd be pretty hard pressed to get rid of them, who would you say is sort of close to being locked? Isak has been a popular name that's been mentioned.
Yeah, so I think he's probably the first one that comes to mind. So I'm going to say Isak. I think I'm going to say Erling Haaland as well. I think in midfield of the 5 I currently have, it's probably Eze if he stays at Crystal Palace. Defensively, Gvardiol has the best chance, but it could be Gvardiol versus Trent. And then goalkeepers, who knows? So yeah, I'll say Isak, Haaland, and Eze are my top 3 at the moment.
Great. Thank you very much. Been a pleasure, Mark, chatting to you and revealing your first draft, which is obviously going to change a lot, but hopefully you guys have enjoyed Mark's thoughts. And Mark will be on the channel regularly over pre-season and getting into the season as well. Do check out the members area in the link in the description. Check out Fantasy EFL, the new game that's come out as well. And we'll catch you very, very soon for another team reveal. Thank you very much, Mark.
Cheers, Tom, and happy tinkering, everyone.